Hello everyone, I'm continuing the cheesecake phase we've been in with this Raspberry Vanilla Cheesecake recipe. My wife and I teamed up on this one with our 2-year-old, so it's a fun and easy enough recipe for anyone. Ready? Let's get started. This recipe is for a 6-inch cheesecake, and this is the exact recipe that I follow. But I've also included a conversion for any of you that want to bake a standard 9-inch cheesecake, and it will turn out just as great. And as always, the recipe can also be found in the video description below. Step 1. Preheat your oven to 325 degrees Fahrenheit and prepare your cheesecake baking pan. Here, I'm using a 6-inch springform baking pan. We're going to begin by creating the crust first. We started by crumbling the graham crackers into 1 cup of graham cracker crumbs. I hope you enjoy my magical editing powers. But don't worry, there's more. Next, melt 3 tablespoons of unsalted butter. Simply melting in a microwave is fine. Now, grab a medium or large mixing bowl, plus your 1 cup of graham cracker crumbs, your 3 tablespoons of melted butter, and 2 tablespoons of granulated sugar. First, pour in your 1 cup of graham cracker crumbs. Next, pour in your 2 tablespoons of granulated sugar. Then pour in your 3 tablespoons of melted butter. When those 3 ingredients have been added together, mix them well using a spatula or large spoon. I've sped this part up in the video, but when you're mixing, make sure to take your time. And this is how it should look when it's fully mixed. When the crust has been mixed properly, pour the mixture into the bottom of your baking pan. My wife and I did this part carefully to make sure we didn't spill. Once it's all been poured in, firmly press the mixture to the bottom of the pan using a spatula. You'll want to add a good amount of pressure to ensure the finished crust has the best texture and flavor. When it's pressed evenly, it should look something like this. Now we're ready to bake the crust at 325 degrees Fahrenheit for 10 minutes. While the crust is baking, it's a great time to start working on the filling. To make the filling, we'll need 1 large mixing bowl plus 16 ounces of cream cheese, room temperature. 16 ounces of cream cheese is actually 2 of the rectangular packets. We'll also be starting with 2/3 of a cup of granulated sugar. Begin by pouring in the 16 ounces of room temperature cream cheese into the large mixing bowl. Then add in your 2/3 of a cup of granulated sugar. Once they've been added, mix them together with an electric or stand mixer. I used the lower mix setting and it took me about 2 to 3 minutes. You'll know it's finished when it has a creamy consistency. It's looking great, and now we're ready for the next step. Now it's time to grab 1/2 cup of sour cream and 1 teaspoon of pure vanilla extract. We carefully added in the 1/2 cup of sour cream first. Then, while that was mixing in, we poured in 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. We're huge fans of vanilla, so pouring in the vanilla extract is one of our favorite parts. You really can't beat the smell of natural vanilla. Once the sour cream and vanilla have been mixed in for about 2 minutes, we're ready for the next step. For this step, we'll be using 2 large grade A eggs. I always crack the eggs ahead of time and put them into glasses. This helps avoid getting any of the eggshell in the recipe. We carefully poured in the first egg and mixed it with the rest of the filling. After around 1 minute, it was fully incorporated. Then we poured in the second egg. This time we mixed for an additional 2 minutes. This helped ensure that both eggs were fully incorporated. The filling is almost complete, so we wanted to make sure it was consistent throughout. As soon as we were done mixing the eggs in, we heard the timer go off. The timer was the 10-minute timer, telling us it was time to remove the crust from the oven. No matter what step of the filling process you're in, when you hear the timer go off, it's time to grab the oven mitts and carefully remove the crust from the oven. While the crust is cooling, let's get back to finishing up the filling. The filling should look like this when we're ready to add the last ingredient. In our case, the last ingredient is 1 cup of raspberries. The raspberries are definitely the star of the show. And remember, the raspberries can either be fresh or frozen. We usually use fresh raspberries, but this time we had to freeze them because we were worried they wouldn't last until we had to use them. But they still tasted great. When you're ready, add your 1 cup of raspberries to the rest of the filling. Then carefully fold them in using a spatula. My wife did an excellent job with this part. If you don't have a spatula, a large spoon will work just fine. You're going to want to avoid using a mixer for this part because the raspberries are so delicate. Even on the lowest setting, our stand mixer would completely smash them. When the raspberries are evenly folded in, the filling is complete and we're ready for the next step. For this step, we're going to add the raspberry filling to the finished crust. Make sure the graham cracker crust has had at least 10 to 15 minutes to cool prior to adding in the filling. This is mainly to make sure that you don't burn yourself. This is one area of the recipe where extra hands can be beneficial. One person can hold the mixing bowl while the other scoops out the raspberry filling. When the filling has been added, make sure to level it out. And now the cheesecake is ready to bake. Carefully place the cheesecake in the oven and bake at 325 degrees for 55 to 65 minutes. After that 55 to 65 minute time period, the center should be almost set. When the cheesecake is done baking, turn off the oven, but leave the cheesecake inside. With the cheesecake still inside, carefully crack the oven door about 2 to 3 inches. This helps cool the cheesecake very slowly and prevents cracking and ensures a smooth, creamy texture. Let the cheesecake cool in this manner for about 1 hour. While the cheesecake is cooling, it's time for our fun Goose Fact. Did you know that Canada geese migrate back north to their breeding sites around this time of year? That's usually in April, May, or early June. If you happen to look up and see them migrating, make sure to wish them safe travels. And now back to the cheesecake. When the cheesecake has cooled for an hour, it's ready to be removed from the oven. Here is some custom spring-themed artwork from one of our kids. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on future recipes with their limited edition kids artwork. We're a small channel, so when you subscribe, it really means a lot to us. You can tell that our cheesecake cooled too rapidly, and so we ended up with a couple of small cracks on the top. This is because we opened the oven door too wide while we were shooting video. The good news is that it doesn't affect the flavor in any way. Once we remove the cheesecake from the oven, we're ready to cover it and put it in the fridge. I covered it with foil, and our recipe suggests refrigerating for at least 4 hours. I'm usually not in a hurry, so I let it refrigerate overnight. After the raspberry cheesecake has been refrigerated for at least 4 hours, it's ready to be removed from the fridge. Now we're ready to carefully remove the foil. Thankfully, we had some little helping hands for this part. Then my wife slowly removed the outer wall of the springform pan. We thought the cheesecake really looked great and we were excited to try it. At this point, we were a bit concerned that the 6-inch size of this cheesecake might not be big enough for my wife and I, plus our 3 small gremlins. We actually have 4 gremlins, but the oldest doesn't like cheesecake. But it turned out that this cheesecake was the perfect size for us. We added some extra raspberries to the top, and then it was ready to serve. My wife and I really liked the color contrast between the raspberries and the cream filling. You can just use a butter knife to slice the cheesecake into 8 equal pieces. It's pretty thick, so you might need to use a little bit of muscle. When we were finally able to try this raspberry cheesecake, it did not disappoint. We all loved the smooth, creamy texture that was occasionally broken up with the sweet raspberries. Surprisingly, we all agreed that one of our favorite parts was the graham cracker crust. It was a perfect, crunchy base. Overall, this was another great cheesecake recipe that was simple and fun enough to make as a family. I'm sure we'll be making it again in the near future. Now that we've made this raspberry cheesecake recipe, we can't forget about the strawberry lovers out there. Check out our irresistible strawberry cheesecake recipe. It's our most popular cheesecake so far. See you there!